right. Just making sure that I have everything set up here. And I actually logged in a few minutes early just to make sure everything's working. So everything's working. And it is. All right. Fantastic. Let me share my, actually, I'll wait to share. Let's see, SPX. Share. Window. All right. We are going to get started here in a few minutes. Actually, 1 minute. We'll go ahead and get started. And just want to make sure I have everything set up here properly. I'm watching it to the second, so we can go ahead and jump in here. "25 seconds. I am well. How are you? All right, we got 5 seconds. And we're going to go. 3. All right, here we go. Welcome to the live stream. I've been off the grid a little bit here. I was on vacation for the week, but now I am back. And so didn't have any new videos last week, but have a lot of new content coming in this week. So very excited to just get a bunch of stuff out there to you guys that I've been working on. Glad that you guys can join me here today. I see that NASCAR All Out is doing a little Sunday research, so that's good. Getting ready for a short week in the markets. We only have 4 days this week, and kind of an interesting week here because we're wrapping up June tomorrow, and then we head into the month of July, which typically is bullish. And obviously last week hitting new all-time highs on all the indices, a lot of individual tickers finally taking off, NVDA finally breaking that 150. There's a lot of opportunity that should be available to us in July from a bullish perspective. But at the same time, we have to be prepared and ready for any type of a pullback, any type of a dip that we potentially can get. And I'll get you guys set up completely for what we're looking forward to this week. What's on the horizon in terms of data. Earnings is really concluded. We're now preparing for summer earnings, which will be kicking off here in 2 weeks with the big banks. So we'll talk about that. And we'll get into charts. And so if you have charts that you'd like me to look at, just go ahead and throw them into the chat, and I will go over those at some point for you to make sure that you are covered and that you have any questions that you have are answered. Just a few other things. I will be publishing my July monthly preview, going over all the important key dates that you need to know for the month, like CPI, PPI, ISM manufacturing, JOLTS reports, GDP, PCE, the Fed, the Fed rate decision, the Powell presser, all that. So that video will be released tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. And like I said, a bunch of new content, a new little thing that I've been working on that I'll be launching tomorrow as well. So I'm excited about that. But with that said, let's go ahead and get going, and let's jump into the charts. All right, here we go. Pulling the SPX. And I want to just start here by coming over to the data calendar just so we know what's coming up this week. And so just taking a look here, again, shortened week. There won't be any trading on Friday for 4th of July. But we can see here on Monday, we're not going to have any 3-bar news. We are going to have 2 Fed speakers. So we'll have Bostic at 10 a.m. and Goolsbee in the afternoon. So keep an eye on that because they could say something that could push the markets a bit. And then when we head over here to the first day of July, you can see that Powell will be speaking at 9:30 a.m. I'm not sure if that says where he's speaking. It does not. But obviously his words are going to move the market. So definitely we'll be paying attention to that. And then we're going to get ISM manufacturing PMI. So some insight into the health of the economy, and then the JOLTS job openings, which is going to give us some insight into the labor market. So definitely going to be watching those 2 pieces of data at 10 a.m. We come over here to Wednesday. Again, more labor data. I know this is only 2-bar, but I will be paying attention to the ADP employment change. That's going to be at 8:15 a.m. So that'll be before the market opens. So I'll be watching that. And then when we come over to Thursday, we are going to get 2 important pieces of data related to the labor market. And that's going to be non-farm payrolls. That'll be at 8:30. And then we're also going to get the unemployment rate. So really, this week has a lot of data related to employment, the labor sector. And that is something that the Fed is watching closely to determine whether or not they're going to cut rates. There's speculation that maybe they'll cut now in July based on some of the comments from Fed speakers this past week. So pay attention to this data as it is rolled out here next week. And then we also, on Thursday, we get ISM services PMI. So we are getting quite a bit of data that's coming this week. And then obviously Friday, July 4th will be closed. So everything's going to be compressed into 4 days. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. And, just the way that things ended last week, we could see that we pushed up into new all-time highs. And so the SPX just made a heck of a run here. And, if we go back to those lows that we made here in April, that was very much, something that was a little scary for a lot of people involved in the market. But I did a video about the direction of the SPX. And if you go back to Trump's first term in 2018, and I'm going to pull that up here now, you could see that we've been really following that type of pattern here. And initially, when Trump announced tariffs in his first term, there was a 20% drop, followed by significant fire, a little bit of a correction, and then this thing just kept chugging and pushing up and making new all-time highs, really just blasting through all the new all-time highs before that big dump came in for COVID, that 35.56% decline. And so could we follow suit? Could something similar be on the horizon for us? It's following pretty closely right now. You could just go and study the chart and take a look at that. But we'll see if we continue to push a little bit higher, but we are due for somewhat of a pullback. It doesn't mean that it's going to be anything massive, but in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, I would not be surprised to see a little bit of pullback. And then here on my chart, what you can see, this is the bar pattern here. So if you come over in a trading view on the left-hand side, this bars pattern, you can copy bars from previous charts and paste them to see how things would play out if a similar pattern came into play. So what I did is I took those bars from 2018 and just laid it over top here to potentially what we can be looking at. So, it's held pretty true so far. So let's see if this continues to play out this way. But if it does, in fact, follow that type of a move, we've got quite a bit of ways to go before we end this bull run. So just something I'm watching there. And then just getting into the candles here on the SPX, you can see that the volume has been steady for the bulls. And we had this nice gap up from Monday into Tuesday because there was talk about the ceasefire between Iran and Israel. And that really just created some bullishness and some push in the markets. And then Friday, obviously, closed green once again. We did have some selling coming in, but there is good volume along with this move, which tells me that the bulls probably will still continue to push this up. And I know a lot of people will say, well, we're starting to get overbought here on the RSI. Yeah, we're close. We haven't broken that plane. But remember, you can get overbought and still continue to push. And we see this if we go back to the summer of last year. So just because we're starting to approach overbought levels doesn't mean that a correction or a pullback is imminent. It just means we need to be ready for what potentially can happen. And then if we just jump over to some of the other indices here, we could see that the Qs, again, looks very similar to the SPX, just continues to push higher. Nice little uptick in bull volume there. Slightly overbought, can still continue to push up, but there's definitely interest here. A lot of the Mag 7 has been pushing. There have been some laggards. I'll talk about those here in a few minutes. And then when we go take a look at the DIA, the Dow Jones Industrial, this finally broke out this inverted head and shoulders pattern. It was really just chopping along this 200-day simple moving average, but finally broke out. And now it looks like it's going to push and challenge new all-time highs. And one ticker that I want to show you guys in indice here is IWM, because it looks very similar. And actually, let me put these two side by side so you can see what I'm talking about here. But if we look at the DIA right here, Dow Jones Industrial, and then let me throw the IWM here, and these charts are going to be a little bit different looking, but notice how the pattern before the breakout on the Dow Jones is similar to what we're seeing here now on IWM. And right above the where the IWM price action is right now is this 200-day simple moving average. And if it can clear that, then it's going to have plenty of room for it to run, because there's not going to be any more moving averages above it. The only point of resistance will be its all-time high that it hit last summer. And so I bring this up because potentially what we could see is the IWM follow the similar pattern that the Dow Jones Industrial put in. So just keep that in mind. That's something that I'm going to be watching here, especially this week. So watch small caps because they can be getting a push. Just coming over here to Bitcoin. Bitcoin did have a nice little pop here today on Sunday. It was up over 1,000 points. And I have this trend line, this upper resistance trend line drawn, watching to see if it could break through that to push up into a new all-time high. It nearly got there today, but got rejected. You can see that you do have some nice support here on the VRVP with these volume nodes. So let's see what happens here with Bitcoin, if it's going to get a push higher or if it's going to dip a bit. So definitely watching Bitcoin to see what happens there. And then just taking a look at the VIX, just to see the volatility in the markets. You could see that we are down below the 100 simple moving average on the weekly. And this thing has dropped fast and hard, following that spike off of the war news. And remember, a lower VIX is good for stocks moving higher. And then if we come look at the 10-year treasury, you can see that we are nearly below all of the moving averages here. And again, a lower 10-year yield is good for stocks. So just keeping an eye on those two to see what happens there. And then the last thing that we'll look at in terms of just bigger picture indices is the US dollar. We can see that continues to fall lower. And really that hasn't caught a bid in quite some time. And we're back to lows and a price that we were in 2022. So that's interesting to see the dollar hanging out down there. So just in general, in terms of the overall broader markets here, I mean, everything looks bullish. And again, we are pushing up there, but just looking at the volume that's coming in, looking at where we are with the RSI, there should be more room left in this move. And I'll be honest with you, I did not see this big of a recovery from those lows that were put in April. So this is surprising to me, which the market shouldn't surprise me anymore with the the way things work. But there's still room here. I do think at some point we're going to have a correction, a bigger drop, because we still don't have completed trade deals out there with other countries. We have that July 9th date coming up when the tariffs are to take effect. So just keep that in mind too. But then you also have the deficit and the payments, the debt payments that the U.S. is making on the deficit. They continue to increase. So there are lots of things out there that could at any time put downward pressure on the market. So you just have to be cognizant and aware of that. And especially when you're back up into these areas where it's all-time highs, you have to be prepared for a correction or a dip. But I do think at this point in time, the dip is buyable, especially in July. July is typically pretty bullish. But then after that, you kind of fall into a weak period seasonality wise. And so I'll be looking to play things bullish here in July. I'll actually be going risk on with some swing trades, which I haven't done in quite some time. But then what I will do is be in all cash by the end of the month, just prepared for what potentially could happen from there in terms of a pullback. So things look strong, and really just coming back over here to IWM, this one is set up for a breakout, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a gap up tomorrow across the indices. And there's a lot of opportunity here in IWM, especially if it can get above that last moving average above it. It can have some room. All right. So that's just an overview of the broader markets. And I just want to come over and check the chat here and see. So we had a request for Google. So we'll take a look at Google. We have one for MYSZ. We'll take a look at that. So that's NASCAR All Out's main watch tomorrow. Totally under the radar, small cap. I have a feeling a big influencer is going to push it tomorrow. All right, so we'll definitely check that out. And he says, Moon Market is the guy I'm watching. I believe he's going to drop a video tonight. It may feature MYSC. So we'll take a look at both of those. So let's start by taking a look at Google, and then we'll go check out that MYSZ, and then I'll get into the other tickers that I typically go over for the video, the Mag 7 and just some other ones I'm watching, SMCI, and some things that really have good setups heading into this week. But let me come back over here to my chart, and let me just make sure that everybody can see it. Let's hit Goog. Make sure that's switched. All right, and it did. All right, so taking a look at Google. So interestingly enough, I did a quick scalp on this guy on Friday, and I'll tell you why. Let me actually move this down. So right about here, no, actually over here. Hold on. So I'm on the 3-minute time frame right now, but you started to see this nice uptick in volume here that came in. And so when I saw this start to happen, this little bit of a push, I did a quick scalp on this and was just able to catch this nice little bit of move that occurred here. But something happened, some type of rotation or some type of news. And if you look at this on the daily, just in terms of the volume that came in there on Friday, I mean, that's a nice volume bar. So it shows that there's definitely some interest in Google to the upside here. And you can see that we haven't had a volume bar like that come in on Google for the bulls in quite some time. And we are above all the moving averages. We are above this node here on the VRVP. And you can see that there's really not much above it in order for it to start running. Now, we want to watch this recent high here at, let's see, what is the price? That's going to be around 182.36 is a point of resistance. But this looks like there should be some continuation. I would not be surprised to see a gap up on Google tomorrow. But this chart looks really nice in terms of where it is. Plus, it's been a laggard when you consider that Microsoft has been pushing NVIDIA finally getting that 150 break. So watch Google tomorrow. It could have a nice push. Just looking here on the weekly, you have a bullish engulfing candle that came in, wiping out the previous candle here. You can see the volume that came in just for the week here on Google. Again, you're just looking at the VRVP. You got nice empty space here up to 192. So definitely keep an eye on Google. It looks very promising for this coming week. And let's take a look at that other ticker. Let me just make sure I have that MYSZ. MYSZ. Let me pull that up here. MYSZ. MYSZ. My size. All right. So let's do a little analysis here. I've never looked at this ticker before. Okay, we saw some nice volume coming in here. So let's just do this and just break it down. I'm going to start with the monthly here. First of all, let me just look and see what this company does. So let's see. My size engages in the development of measurement technologies. It provides solutions for e-commerce, apparel, shipping and parcel delivery, and do-it-yourself industry applications. It offers measurement apps, including My Size ID, Box Size, and Size Up. All right. I'm not going to read all this. Okay. Artificial intelligence-driven measurement solutions. Okay. All right. So we got an idea of what this thing does. So let's just take a look here. The first thing I like to do whenever taking a look at a chart is just get a feel for what its all-time high was. Jeez. 50,000. All right. This thing has been around for quite some time. Its most recent high, I mean, 10. Oh, this is a crazy. Oh, I'm on the monthly. So I don't know if it would ever have the power to get back to those price areas. Let's just look at it from the daily perspective here and see what we've got. All right. So pretty volatile. Penny stocks can be volatile. They are, susceptible to being influenced with pump and dumps. And you can see the shares float 2.85 million. And then just looking recently here, this thing was up to $9.41. So that was, when was that? That was December of this past year. So it did get a pretty significant move there. And then we could see that it sold down after that and basically just been moving sideways here for over 6 months, for about 6 months. And recently you did get some buying that came in here on Friday. So this past Friday, we did see a decent sized candle rejected off of that 100 simple moving average on the daily. But above that, you do have room up to the 200. And just looking here, you could see that you do have quite a bit of volume here on the VRVP that it's going to have to fight through in order to press higher. But penny stocks can be very volatile. And, we could see this thing, push. Again, I typically don't trade penny stocks just because their susceptibility to just getting dumped. But just taking a look here, there was some type of news or activity or something that occurred here on Friday that caused some buying to come in. Let's see if there's anything here. Let's see. And this, so these are all old charts and old posts here. Sometimes if you go in there, so let me show you guys that real fast. If you click on the news headline for the ticker there and you click on ideas, you'll have people who post their thoughts on what potentially the stock could do. And then this minds piece is where people make comments about what is happening. So yeah, I mean, again, what do I have to offer here? And looking at this one, I mean, this would just be a pure speculative play just because it is a penny stock, unless it's going to announce some partnership with a larger company or some big company is going to buy them out if there's some insider information related to that. But just looking from a sheer technical analysis perspective, you could see that you have these big, massive moves that can come in and, drive it higher, but then you could see it gives it all back. But it's been moving sideways for quite some time. So maybe it is gearing up for one of these pops higher. So if you have a play on this, wish you the best of luck. But it just looks like sideways movement. You had some buying come in here. You can see that the RSI is turning up, and really just, I like to look at my moving averages. It's going to have to break this 100. And then what you would watch from there is the 200, this blue line here. This is your 200-day exponential moving average, which your EMAs are not as strong as your SMAs. So really, if you could clear that 100 and 200, maybe this thing could get a push like it did here in March up to that $3 range, maybe even higher. But again, if I was in something like this and it popped like that, I would be quick to take my profits, because you could see what happens after it pushes up. So best of luck out there to NASCAR All Out and with that one. Let's take a look at Boeing for quintessential. So that's where we're going next. Boeing. BA. Here we go. Man, they had a heck of a candle that came in on Friday, didn't they? So yeah, let's take a look at Boeing here. And I didn't update my lines on this guy in quite some time, but you can see that we're above really all the moving averages except for this monthly, which I got to adjust quickly here. But this is a strong candle that came in, and you could see this gap down that it had. And this was on that plane crash that happened just a few weeks ago. But this gap here up to 212 got filled with strength on Friday. Let's see if there was any news. Any news on Friday? Okay, looks like it got some. It got raised to a buy, and price target raised to 275 from 180. So you had some price target upgrades that generated some optimism here. So yeah, so we filled that gap on Friday. That's a strong candle, and it's almost a shaved top candle, which shows that there's really no selling interest on that. And so just going back to look at the last time Boeing had a strong candle like that. So this was back in February. It did get a little bit more of a push up. Let's see, by how much? By about $2.21 before kind of flattening out and dropping. But this candle is nearly twice the size of this one. So there can be more room here. Again, just watching, if you're playing this one long, watching it, what it does when it gets up to this 100 simple moving average on a monthly, which it hasn't been there in quite some time. You have to go back to January of 2024. What is crazy about Boeing is look at its all-time high. It's way up here at 445.80. So if this thing could get moving, I mean, you have a lot of space for this to go. And then just looking at the VRVP, you have pretty big gap in between here if you could start getting above some of those volume nodes. And I talked about earlier in the winter, how on this monthly, this almost looks like inverted head and shoulders. So Boeing could be setting up for a push higher. It's not overbought on the RSI. This one could have some potential here, to just kind of stick with it for a while. But again, the area that you're going to want to watch for a rejection, and maybe this is where you lock in some profits and move stops, is going to be at that 100 simple moving average on a monthly at 236.26. So yeah, that chart looks pretty solid, and that's a heck of a candle to get in there with on Friday. Let's see. So coming back here, NASCAR All Out says moon market push LCFY on Friday from 250 to 14. Wow, it was an AI play, and I think he's going to target another IT company. He does the $1 to $3 price range with under 5. Nice. Okay. Maybe he was front loading on Friday based on that. Potentially. I'll be interested to see what happens with that tomorrow, so I'll keep an eye on it. But I hope it crushes higher for you, man. I'll definitely going to watch that one with interest for you tomorrow. Guys, if you have tickers, go ahead and throw them in here, because now I'm just going to start running through some of the standards. So Apple, This one's been a laggard, and it's only going to stay down here for so long before you have Microsoft or NVIDIA pass the baton here, and then it starts pushing. And so it's just a matter of time. The last three earnings reports from Apple have led to gap downs. And so we do have an earnings report coming up on July 23rd that I would watch. And I have been slowly grabbing some shares here on Apple because there could be a nice opportunity to the upside. And really, we've got this well-defined support that's come in. And so I'm watching for this one to get a push. It's on my radar. It still might be a week or two away from going, but any further drops, I'll be adding to my position because I do think that there's some opportunity here. Taking a look at Adobe, there is an inverted head and shoulders pattern that is in place here. I would like to see it drop a little bit more. I do think that there is an opportunity here on this stock because you could see how far away we are from all-time highs. So this one could definitely get moving. There's just not been a lot of interest in it. And you can see we have a gap to fill up here to 435.85. So there's definitely some opportunity. I'm watching it. So keep an eye on that one. It doesn't look like it's ready yet. It is below of its moving averages, but I'm definitely going to continue to watch that one. How about Coinbase? Look at this move that we had on Coinbase. And I kept talking about my community with my charting, how this thing just kept making lower highs and that it needed something to break out of here. And man, if you were patient and stuck around in this one, or you got in as it was dipping, you were rewarded nicely because it just pushed up significantly. And it's still a decent ways off its all-time high up here at 429.54, but you definitely have a strong monthly candle that's going to be put in place here for June. And it's probably got a little bit more upside ahead of it here, but a nice move by Coinbase last week. All right. CRCL. So this is a new IPO that had a lot of strength here recently and finally started resting and retesting a little bit. And we got a couple days of selling. You have this big bearish candle come in on Friday, and there is a gap that needs to be filled down here to 135.37. So I'm going to watch to see if it can come down here and fill that, and then I'll look for some longs. But I was playing this with day trades on its moves higher and was rewarded nicely. And then when it got up near 300, I was like, yeah, I'm going to back off this one for a bit because I think it's getting a little frothy. And thankfully I did. But again, I'm watching to see if it can come down to that 135.71 because there could be some nice opportunities from there to the upside. Salesforce is another ticker that I really like where it is right now. So this is ticker symbol CRM. And you can see that this thing is well off of its all-time highs too. You did have a double top pattern that came in and then just dripped down, bottomed in April. Then you had a double bottom pattern. Really, we're retesting this neckline. We're sitting on a point of control here. But you could see above this 276 range, it's pretty thin in volume all the way up to 323. So I am watching this one. I do like Salesforce for a potential swing trade. So I'm keeping my eye on this one because the chart looks pretty solid. We did have some nice volume come in here on Friday as well. All right, continuing to push through here. Microsoft just continuing with the Mag 7, just continues to smash higher, new all-time highs, above all the moving averages. It is overbought. You would think this one's got to cool off a little bit. And if you go and just look to the left and see whenever this does get overbought for quite some time, that it does have a decent little pullback or correction. So I would not be surprised to see that coming here soon. And then see money rotate out of Microsoft into one of the laggards, Google, Apple. So just keep an eye on that one. But it's been a heck of a move for Microsoft. And this thing was I wouldn't even call it beat up. It moved sideways for really the bulk of a year before it did anything. And so maybe it needs that $500 price point first, and then it will correct. But I'm looking for that one to drop. Another one that I'm looking for a cool off period is Netflix. This thing has just exploded. I mean, if you would have bought here at 820, the tariff lows, man, you made some good cash. Because somebody did. So that's a 5. I hope somebody in the live stream had a part of the that Netflix will split here in their next earnings report. Do for a pullback, it's got to cool off. The last 3 earnings reports, I think that it has gapped up. So this is one for its July report. I would not be surprised to see a drop down in its price. NVIDIA finally broke above that resistance, and now that it has, I wouldn't be surprised if it continues to run up. You saw this nice 3-bar push, solid volume, a little bit of a retest, and then we just continued higher on Friday. 160 to 165 is the price area I'd keep my eyes on. We are a little bit overbought, but that doesn't matter for NVIDIA. It can keep running. But finally, it broke the 150. So congrats to all the NVIDIA bulls out there for being patient. And you're going to be squeezing a lot of bears up in here. I mean, just look at all this bearish volume associated with some of these reversal candles. So I think there's definitely some more room here for NVIDIA before it does cool down a little bit. Roblox is another chart. I mean, just look at this, just pushing up, crushing higher, but still not at all-time highs. But this one has got to cool off a bit. I'd like to see a little bit of a retest, at least down to that 20 EMA, maybe play a bounce out of there, but it's too extended for me. But props to Roblox for just really pushing out of the gutter, because this thing was beat up for quite some time, and it's finally getting a decent move. SMCI, this is a chart that I really like right now as well. Again, you can see it is very far off of its all-time high. We have a gap that needs filled up here at 86. And if you look at the most recent high that it's had up here at 66.28, that was back in February. But what I like about this chart is, even though it fell off from that and bottom there at the April lows, it retested that a few times. So this tells me that people were interested in buying even despite that negativity and negative sentiment with the tariffs. And then as it pushed up here, you could see, again, you had interested buyers accumulating shares here now. And if we look where we are, we just have this 100 SMA on the weekly above us before it can really start pushing. So I would not be surprised to see SMCI really get moving. And if it moves, it can move fast and hard. So keep an eye on SMCI this week. Soundhound's another one. Again, you have an inverted head and shoulders here. It just looks like it's building pressure, and you have this gap up to 1337 that it can fill. You have some space here on the VRVP, so definitely watching that. That potentially could have a nice move. And taking a look at Tesla. So Musk was criticizing the big beautiful bill again on X yesterday, which typically that doesn't work out well for Tesla stock when that happens. Let's see if there's a push down there, tomorrow. But we do have nice support here below. But what you can see forming here is a bit of a double top pattern on Tesla. And so will it come to fruition? Will it break down? What I would keep an eye on is its next earnings report, which is going to be, what's the date on this one? July 29th. And the reason I bring that up is because 4 of the last 5 earnings reports, Tesla has gapped up. So it is due for a push lower off of earnings. So let's see if it just kind of continues to move sideways here until then. But it looks like Tesla could come down. The only thing that I think would regenerate sentiment in this, because everything is really bad in terms of deliveries and sales, it's got to be positive news related to autonomous driving or the Optimus robots. If that doesn't come through and it's there's negativity that continues to follow the car sales, we will see this chart break down. So just keeping an eye on that one. The trade desk, I really like this chart. It hasn't broken out yet, but you do have this nice, bull flag. You are finally above that 100-day simple moving average, and it just kind of keeps chopping along here. But you could see if it somehow gets down below into this volume gap, it can drop very fast and hard. And it does have a gap to fill at 61.17, which I will be a buyer of shares if it does fill that gap. But this one showed a lot of promise off its move on earnings. It really hasn't done much since then, but I do like the fact that it is above 100. If it did get moving, you got space up to 94.15. Keeping an eye on the trade desk, because this one too, this was a $141 stock, and there could be some opportunity here. So definitely keeping an eye on that one. And let me just check to see if there's anything else I wanted to cover before I open it back up to you guys and we wrap this thing up. I don't think so. All right, so let me come over here. All right, so King Conte, what's going on? Welcome to the live stream. What do you think about NICE? NICE. So let me pull that up for you. NICE. Haven't heard of it, but I will look at it for you. Nice. All right, let's just take a look here. I'm just looking at the all-time high 319, so pretty far off of its all-time highs. And this chart kind of looks similar to Salesforce that I was talking about earlier. But yeah, I mean, you've got some nice support that it's sitting on right here. If we're looking at the VRVP, we are below the 200-day simple moving average, but you do have the 50 below it. You have the 100 below it. And typically when that 50 crosses through the 200, that is the golden cross, which can be bullish. And so, this one could get moving here. What's interesting in just looking at a lot of these candles here recently is just the upper wicks that are coming in. So, there's still some selling pressure around it. In terms of the RSI, it's not overbought. It's not oversold. It's just kind of hanging out there in the middle. The volume looks a little low. Looks like there was quite a bit of activity in February off this gap down. You had a lot of accumulation taking place here, and then it ground higher. I mean, and you can look at it this way too. If we're looking just at a larger, just a longer term perspective, you have this double bottom. Really, we're just coming in and retesting the neckline of that double bottom. So this could be setting up for, a push higher. So you just want to see what it's going to do the next time it gets above that 200 and above that 10-day, because then there's not going to be much above it. Now, let me see if there's any weeklies above it. Okay, so we are going to have some resistance. If this thing started pushing at 183.30, so that's going to be your 100 weekly simple moving average. So that would be a point of resistance that you would want to keep an eye on in terms of a rejection point. But yeah, I actually like this chart, and I'll keep an eye on this one. And I'll actually next weekend we can revisit it and see where it's at. But I would wait for it to get above that 200 and then let it settle there first, just because of all those upper wicks that have come in. And then once it stabilizes up there, then it should have an opportunity to push. And it does look like it has a gap to fill here at 177.61. So that's my take on NICE. Let's take a look at Nike and MSCI. All right. So Nike, I actually played with shares over earnings, and that worked out pretty nicely for me. It took a while for it to get going. Yeah, that was nice. So I mean, Nike has been beat up for, I mean, if you just look at this thing, we zoom out, you know, this is well off of all-time highs. Let me come in on the monthly. I mean, 179 here. And so, yeah, you got a great gap up. Again, the earnings were pretty terrible, but it's more about the direction of the new CEO and where he sees things heading. And it's pretty positive. I think people are buying into his vision. And so the company is basically saying that the worst is behind them and that things should really start to turn around now. But you have, let's see, we had gap fill here from March that's been taken care of. And then the next area we want to watch here is this gap from October of 2024, 87.75. And then the other thing to keep in mind too is just, again, looking at your moving averages. So it did close above that 200 daily simple moving average. If you look, the weekly right there served as a rejection point, right? So we see it pushed above it, but got smacked back down. So we want to see if it could get above that 200, or wait, that's actually the 50 on the weekly. We want to see it get above that 50, and then we'd be watching for that 100 weekly as the next area of rejection, which is close to that gap that needs filled at 87. And then from there, you have the 200 at 105.43. So again, anytime you have volume like that coming in, that shows that there's interest from the buyers. So Nike probably will continue to move here in the next few weeks. I'm going to mark this gap out that needs to be filled. So this one should continue to get some love from buyers. And MSCI. Let's take a look at this one. So this is cool about the live stream. There's a lot of these stocks I've never even heard of. Ooh, and you know what I like about this one? I love the compression of the moving averages here. And you can see here how the 200 and the 100 are squeezing and compressing the candles. And what that tells me is you have pressure building. And this one could be set up for a nice move. You've got this nice volume node here on the VRVP that could serve as just a launch pad. And so this one could get going, and you do have an unfilled gap, and it's kind of hard to see. I'm like leaning in on my screen, but you do have an unfilled gap here at 619.44. So this one could get moving. It's kind of got an awkward looking inverted head and shoulders pattern on this, but you know, this one could push. Let's see where and this also closed above that 50 weekly. So there's not a lot of moving averages holding this thing back. So this one could be a runner. So Quintessential, thanks for sharing this. I'm actually going to tag this one and pay attention to it. That's a nice looking chart there. That one looks like it's ready to go. And then let's take a look at Amazon. Let's come over to Amazon. Let's go over to AMZN. So Bezos just sold a bunch of shares. So we'll see if we're going to get the pullback. So, all right. So we got this unfilled gap up here, 235 range. Nice volume came in here. I mean, you got a lot of sell orders in place. I mean, this chart looks like it has more room, but notice that you'll rarely see Amazon ever get overbought. So, and if it does, it gets smacked right back down, and that typically aligns with where Bezos sells his shares. So this one probably has a little bit more room to the upside. Again, I would watch this gap fill here, but just go back and study your charts, and you can see that it doesn't stay up there on the IS or RSI for very long before it comes back down. So just be aware of that. It's not overbought yet, but if Bezos is selling shares, that typically lines up with a bit of a pullback, but it definitely should have some room to the upside there. King, you are welcome, man. I love doing this stuff. So this is fun for me. And then finally, we'll finish up with this one. Thoughts on the Tesla Robotaxi rollout in Austin? I question if vision only cameras are the answer. So yeah, I'll say this. I love the company, Tesla. I do think that autonomous driving will eventually be something that is part of our cultural fabric and the Optimus robots. I just think that, I mean, the way Musk rolls things out is he's very optimistic about them, and his timeline always gets pushed back, or what they were originally promising, you don't get it. You get a bit of a watered down version of it, which is what we're seeing with the rollout in Austin. So it didn't have a lot of people as excited as what they thought they were going to get. However, the great thing about the self-driving feature of the Tesla cars is that all of that data from the driving is used to train its AI. So it's only going to improve over time. I just don't think it's ready yet. And I don't know how long it's going to take before it's ready. I think the public was promised that it would be fully ready this summer. And obviously we could see that that's not the case. And then you factor in the tiff between Trump and Musk now, and if that's going to set them back in terms of easing regulations for autonomous driving. It's just, I think things are setting up for volatility with Tesla. So I don't think it's there yet. I think it will be, and I think long term it's going to be, Tesla could be the most profitable company, but I think we're a little ways away. And yeah, to the vision only cameras, I own a Tesla. When you have foggy weather or rain or snow, the cameras are impeded, and it says that like when you go to use self-driving, it'll say the cameras are degraded, so auto drive isn't available. So they're going to have to solve that. And you're right. A lot of people question if you could do that with the camera only approach, and that you need to have the radar, but we'll see. But I appreciate everybody being here and for joining the live stream. I hope that you join me here next weekend. I was off last week for vacation, but I'll be rolling here every week moving forward. Check out the channel if you haven't done so. Subscribe, share with your family and friends. Like it, leave me some comments. I always appreciate that. I love what I do, that I get to trade and share this with others. And so I hope you guys have a great trading week and go make some money. All right, everyone, take care.